A woman saw her millionaire ex-husband and his lover at a party, but what happened next was the last thing anyone expected. This is a story about betrayal, vengeance, and a twist of fate no one saw coming. The rain hammered against the streets of Sydney that night. Claire's windscreen wipers squeaked a monotonous rhythm as the neon reflections of the city's shops bled into the drops streaming down her window. Her knuckles were white, clutching the steering wheel with such a fierce grip they were aching. Her chest hurt, but it wasn't a physical pain. It was that suffocating ache that feels like it's hollowing you out from the inside. She knew she'd never forget this night, the night her whole life came crashing down. Her phone buzzed on the dash. The name Marcus flashed on the screen. Her husband. The man she had given every year of the last decade to. Claire hesitated before answering, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. "Hello?" Her voice came out shaky. On the other end, a heavy sigh. "Claire, we need to talk." Something was off. She could feel it in her bones. His voice was distant, cold. Not like before, when he'd call her "my love," or laugh into the phone before he'd even said anything. "Marcus, what's going on?" The silence was unbearable. "Can we meet at home in a bit?" he asked finally. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted answers. "Now," she said. "Just tell me, Marcus." Her voice rose with a hint of desperation. "What is happening?" And then he said it, cold, straight to the point, without a single hesitation. "I want a divorce." The words were a physical blow. Claire felt as if the ground had opened up beneath her feet. The air turned thick, impossible to breathe. "What? I met someone." "I'm so sorry, Claire, but I love someone else." The sentence echoed in her mind like a thunderclap. Her eyes burned. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it was about to explode. "You love someone else?" Her voice cracked. "I didn't want it to be this way," he sighed. "But I can't keep pretending." Claire tasted the bitter tang of betrayal before she even fully understood what was happening. "Who is she?" Another silence. She heard a noise in the background, a whisper, and then a woman's voice. "Marcus, are you going to be long?" Claire felt an electric shock run through her body. She didn't need anything else. No more explanations, no more apologies, no more pathetic attempts to soften the blow. He was with her right now. The line went dead, and Claire stayed there, sitting in her car, staring into the abyss. At first the tears came silently. Then they came like a storm. The following days were a blur. Claire refused to leave her room. His scent was still on his pillow. His clothes were still in the wardrobe. The wedding ring still felt heavy on her finger, a cruel reminder of what they once were. She spent sleepless nights, reliving every moment of their marriage. When did it all start to fall apart? 2 years ago, she remembered their last trip together. They were in the Hunter Valley. Marcus held her hand as they walked through a vineyard. She had felt so safe, so loved, or at least she thought she did. "Promise we'll come back here one day?" she'd asked, smiling up at him. Marcus kissed her forehead. "I promise." But now, looking back, Claire wondered, when did that promise break? Were there signs she ignored? The excuses for coming home late? The increasingly frequent business trips? The way he just stopped looking at her like he used to? She realized, too late, that the cracks were always there. She had just refused to see them. Months later, a news report on TV was covering a gala event for Marcus's company. The cameras showed couples smiling, CEOs shaking hands, and then there he was, Marcus, in a black suit, holding a champagne flute, and right next to him, Chloe, the woman he'd left her for, young, stylish, beautiful. Chloe wore a red dress that hugged her body, her dark hair falling in perfect waves over her shoulders. She was smiling at Marcus as if she knew exactly what she had done. as if she knew she had won. Claire felt a bitter taste in her mouth. After all, what did Chloe have that she didn't? And then, as if the universe wanted to destroy her completely, the reporter asked, "Marcus, rumors say your marriage recently ended. Is that true?" Marcus looked at Chloe before answering. "Some things just come to an end, but life always surprises us with new opportunities." Claire clenched her fists. Her chest burned. The tears came back. But this time, something inside her shifted. She couldn't continue like this. She couldn't let Marcus and Chloe win. If he had moved on, then she would too. Claire took a deep breath and wiped her face. The woman she used to be died right there. And in that instant, without her even knowing it, a new Claire began to emerge. That night, Claire looked in the mirror longer than usual. The pale, defeated face of the last few months was gone. In its place was a woman who had learned to get back up, who had rebuilt her life brick by brick. She still carried scars, but now they were just marks of battles won. At first it was hard. The first step always is. After the divorce, she had to relearn how to live without depending on anyone. The money she received in the settlement was enough to start over, but not to live without a worry in the world. For the first time in years, Claire had to face the real world alone. At first, the job market seemed cruel. Her business administration degree felt almost obsolete after so many years out of the industry, dedicated to a marriage that, in the end, left her with nothing but bitter memories. The condescending looks at job interviews, the polite rejections, and the closed doors were a massive blow to her already fragile self-esteem. But she didn't give up. Claire started from scratch. She took a job as an assistant in a small financial consulting firm in the centre of Sydney, even though she knew she was qualified for so much more. She worked tirelessly, absorbing everything she could. She stayed late at her desk, studied at night, and networked. In a few months, she became indispensable to the company, and in a year she was promoted. Recognition came fast. Her determination and intelligence were undeniable. When she realized she had learned everything she could at that job, Claire made the boldest decision of her life. She resigned and started her own firm. It was a risk. Sleepless nights, fear, uncertainty. But for the first time, fear didn't paralyze her. It fueled her. She used every lesson learned from her failed marriage, every humiliation and heartache as fuel to grow. And so, 2 years passed. Now, Claire was the owner of a financial consulting firm that was expanding at a cracking pace. She was a respected figure in the market, an independent, confident, powerful woman. The days of tears and self-pity were long gone. She had proved to herself that happiness didn't depend on anyone but her. Tonight, as she prepared for the Gala event, Claire smiled at her reflection in the mirror. The sleek black dress hugged her curves perfectly. Her hair, once always tied in a lifeless bun, now fell in sophisticated waves over her shoulders. Red lipstick boosted her confidence, and the high heels made her feel even more formidable. She didn't need this party to feel validated. But it was an important event in the business world, and she had been personally invited by the host. It meant she had made it to the top. The past no longer defined her. The ballroom was lit by crystal chandeliers and packed with businessmen, celebrities, and influential figures. Claire walked in with her head held high, greeting a few people she knew. She felt good, like she finally belonged here. But then, something unexpected happened. She felt a stare burning a hole in her. Claire followed her instinct and turned her head slowly. Across the room, a man was standing, holding a champagne flute, his jaw slack. His eyes were wide, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Marcus. Her ex-husband, the man who had cheated on her, humiliated her, and discarded her as if she were irrelevant. Time hadn't been as kind to him as it had been to Claire. His face carried the marks of stress, and his eyes had a different glint, somewhere between surprise and regret. And then Claire noticed something even more shocking. Next to him, holding his arm with a tense expression, was Chloe, the woman Marcus had left her for. The entire ballroom seemed to disappear for a moment. All the sounds, colours and movement around them faded. Only 3 people seemed to exist in that space: Claire, Marcus, and Chloe. And in that instant, Claire knew that this night would change everything. She felt every eye on her as she stood motionless in the middle of the room. Marcus was still frozen, looking stunned, as if he couldn't believe the woman he was seeing in front of him. Time had passed for both of them, but the difference was stark. While he looked worn down, carrying the weight of choices he was perhaps already beginning to question, Claire was shining, radiant, untamable. Chloe noticed. She noticed before Marcus even understood. Her body was rigid, her eyes unable to turn away from Claire, as if she were seeing a ghost of something that once belonged to her and now seemed out of reach. Chloe didn't like what she was feeling. She didn't like the way Marcus was reacting. She knew Claire was different, more confident, more sophisticated, more powerful than ever, and it unsettled her more than she cared to admit. "Are you all right, love?" Chloe's voice was sweet, but there was a sharp edge to it. Marcus blinked a few times, snapping out of his trance and trying to hide his shock. "It's just surprising. Haven't seen her in years." Chloe smiled, but her chest felt tight. Lately she had felt Marcus drifting away. Small details that didn't bother her before now seemed to scream. The nights he came home late without explanation. The silent breakfasts. The way he would look at his phone and sigh before putting it away. She no longer felt as secure as she once did, and now, seeing Claire, that insecurity grew like a shadow in her mind. So, Chloe made a decision. If Marcus couldn't take his eyes off Claire, then she would make sure Claire knew exactly who the woman next to him was now. With deliberate steps, she grabbed her champagne flute and walked towards Claire. Every step was rehearsed, every movement meticulously planned. She would not let that woman steal her scene. Claire saw Chloe approaching, but showed no reaction. She knew what was coming. For a long time, she had been naive enough to believe that some people just moved on without needing to destroy others. But now, she knew the truth. Chloe wasn't coming over to compliment her. Chloe was coming over to mark her territory. "Claire! What a surprise to see you here!" Chloe's voice was sweet, but poison dripped between the words. Claire smiled, remaining composed. "Chloe, how are you?" Chloe tilted her head slightly, like she was observing something curious. "I see life has been kind to you. You look wonderful." Claire held her gaze without wavering. "Life has been fair to me. And you?" The question caught Chloe off guard for a second. Her smile faltered, but then returned to her face. "I've never been better. After all, I married the man of my dreams. Marcus is a wonderful husband." Claire noticed the glint in Chloe's eyes, a glint that wasn't happiness, but provocation. She didn't need to hear this. She didn't need a fight. Time had already taught her that some battles are won simply by choosing not to fight. "I'm happy for you both," Claire replied, not changing her voice. But before she could end the conversation and walk away, a familiar sound made her freeze. Marcus's laughter. Claire turned her head slightly, and there he was, still standing in the same spot, talking to another group of businessmen. But now, next to him, there was another woman, and she was laughing. Chloe noticed the change in Claire's expression and followed her gaze. And that's when she saw her. A young woman, dark hair, flawless skin, a red dress that perfectly shaped her curves. She was leaning slightly towards Marcus, her hand resting on his arm with an easy familiarity. Chloe felt a chill run down her spine. "Marcus, who is that?" Her voice wavered. The young woman smiled, completely ignoring Chloe's presence. "I'm Isabella." Didn't Marcus tell you about me?" The entire ballroom seemed to go silent in that instant. Chloe blinked, confused, trying to process what was happening. "What?" She looked at Marcus, expecting an explanation, expecting him to laugh and say it was all a misunderstanding. But he didn't say anything. The colour drained from Chloe's face. A wave of nausea swept over her body as Claire's words echoed in her mind. "Life has been fair to me. And you?" Fair. Chloe felt the weight of that word now. Claire watched the scene without saying a word. She didn't need to. There was no satisfaction in seeing Chloe being cheated on in the same way she had been. But there was something inevitable there. The truth always finds a way to reveal itself. Marcus tried to hold his composure, but Claire saw through it. She saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Regret. For the first time, Marcus truly saw her. Not as the woman he left, but as the woman he should never have lost. But it was too late. Claire picked up her flute and slowly, unhurriedly, swirled the liquid inside. The chaos unfolding in front of her was no longer her problem. She was above it. She was above all of them. And then, without saying another word, Claire turned. And she disappeared into the crowd, leaving Marcus and Chloe to face the weight of their own choices. The silence between Chloe and Marcus became unbearable. Her eyes were wide, her mouth agape in shock, and the hand holding the champagne flute trembled slightly. She looked at Isabella again, as if she needed to be sure that this woman was really there, next to her husband, so comfortable, so confident. "Marcus!" Chloe's voice came out lower than she intended. She cleared her throat and tried again, now with a firmer tone. "Who is that woman?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair, visibly uncomfortable. His eyes darted between Chloe and Isabella, but he said nothing. Chloe took a step forward, feeling the pressure in her chest increase. "I'm waiting, Marcus!" Isabella, on the other hand, seemed to be enjoying the situation. She smiled, resting her hand gently on Marcus's arm, as if he belonged to her. "Oh, darling, you really don't know?" Isabella laughed, a light, poisonous sound. "This is awkward." Chloe felt her stomach churn. Every cell in her body was begging for this to be a misunderstanding, for Marcus to deny it, for him to say anything that would pull her from this humiliating position. But he didn't deny it. He said nothing. Marcus just looked away, raising the champagne flute to his lips in a rush, as if he wanted to hide behind the glass. And that's when Chloe understood. She felt a chill run down her spine. Her heart began to beat fast, not from love, but from fear. Fear that everything she had built, her image, her status, her marriage, was about to come crashing down in front of everyone. Are you?" Chloe swallowed hard. Her face contorted in a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Are you cheating on me, Marcus?" Several heads began to turn. The ballroom was huge, filled with businessmen, politicians and socialites. But now, many eyes were on them. A murmur began to grow all around. Marcus finally looked at Chloe. He opened his mouth to say something, but then closed it. He had no justification. I don't think this is the place to... The place? Chloe laughed without humour, feeling tears burn her eyes. She pointed at Isabella. "So that's why you've been so distant lately. You're sleeping with that... Hey, watch your mouth!" Isabella interrupted, her voice loaded with irony. "You've been in my position before, remember? I think you know exactly how this works." Chloe's breath caught for an instant. She had been in Isabella's position. She had been Isabella to Claire. The truth hit her with full force. Marcus walked past her, trying to minimize the scandal. He muttered something low, trying to calm her down, but Chloe was beside herself. She wasn't Claire. She wouldn't accept being discarded. "You're pathetic, Marcus. I gave everything up for you. I made enemies for you. I became a joke to be with you. And now you just throw it all away for that girl?" Marcus sighed and ran his hands over his face, exasperated. He looked around, aware that they were drawing too much attention. He couldn't lose his composure here. "Can we talk about this later?" "Later! Later!" Chloe screamed. All eyes were now on them. Isabella, for her part, just watched, crossing her arms and smiling a little. Marcus took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a moment, and turned to leave. He needed a break. He needed to think. But just as he took a few steps away from the commotion, something caught his attention from the other side of the ballroom. Claire. And she wasn't alone. A tall, imposing man had just walked up to her. A perfect suit hugged his muscular body, and his smile was confident. The entire ballroom knew him. Henry Valmont, a billionaire CEO, one of the most influential men in the country. Marcus watched him with a pang in his chest as Henry placed a hand naturally on Claire's waist. It was an intimate gesture, as if that were his place. Claire turned to him and smiled. A genuine smile, full of something Marcus hadn't seen in her for years. Freedom. And then it happened. Henry leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a quick or timid kiss. It was the kind of kiss that made it clear to everyone in that room that Claire was no longer a lonely woman, that she belonged to another man. Marcus felt something cold crawl up his spine. Anger. Jealousy. Possession. He clenched his fists at his sides, not noticing that Chloe was still screaming behind him, not noticing that Isabella was watching him with a look of boredom. Nothing else mattered in that instant, because while two women were fighting over him, his gaze was fixed on Claire. And for the first time in years, he realized that maybe he had lost something he could never get back. Marcus couldn't look away. The entire ballroom seemed distant. The voices around him became muffled sounds. All he could see at that moment was Claire in the arms of another man. She was radiant, smiling in a way he hadn't seen in years, maybe in a way he'd never seen before. And then, without hesitation, Henry kissed her again, this time longer, more intentional, as if he wanted to make it clear to everyone there that Claire was his now. Marcus's stomach turned. He felt a bitter taste in his mouth, a tight knot in his throat. Jealousy, anger, a feeling of possession that he didn't even know still existed inside him. But it wasn't just that. It was something deeper, a late recognition of what he had lost. Behind him, Chloe was still arguing, now ignored by everyone around them. She was gesticulating, talking too fast, her voice loaded with desperation and indignation. Isabella, on the other hand, watched the scene with a victorious smile on her lips, as if she already knew this moment would come. But Marcus was no longer there. At least not in body and soul. He was completely absorbed in what he was seeing on the other side of the ballroom. Claire turned to Henry with an amused look, as if the excessive attention on them didn't bother her at all. On the contrary, she seemed to enjoy it. Or perhaps she just didn't care anymore. After everything that had happened, Marcus realized that nothing he could do would ever affect her now. And that bothered him even more. He always thought that Claire would be his shadow, that even after the divorce, she would still be there, hurt, broken, unable to move on. But now, seeing her next to Henry, one of the most powerful figures in the country, a man who could have any woman he wanted, something inside Marcus twisted in a way he didn't expect. Chloe finally noticed that he wasn't listening to her anymore. She followed his gaze, and when she saw Claire and Henry, her face contorted, first in surprise, then in rage. "You've got to be kidding me," she said, her voice loaded with hatred. "After everything that just happened here, after you humiliated me in front of everyone, that's what you're thinking about." Marcus didn't respond. He didn't even look at her. He kept watching Claire as if he was trying to decipher every detail of her expression. Chloe laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Unbelievable! You're jealous of her." This time, Marcus turned his eyes from Claire and looked at Chloe. His gaze was filled with a mix of pain and disillusionment. For the first time, he really saw what he was doing. The woman he had left Claire for was now in front of him, broken, wounded, and he just didn't care. He opened his mouth to say something, but Chloe held up her hand, stopping him. "You know something, Marcus. You deserve all this. You deserve to lose. You deserve to see someone else take the place that was once yours." Her words should have hurt him, but they didn't. Chloe pushed past him and walked away with a determined stride, ignoring the eyes around her. Isabella rolled her eyes and let out a low laugh before also walking away. Now Marcus was alone, or at least that's how he felt. He couldn't explain what was happening inside him. He should be worried about Chloe. He should be thinking about how to fix the mess he'd gotten himself into. He should be focused on anything but Claire. But all he could think about was her. He watched as Henry held her hand, leading her through the ballroom. They looked like a perfect couple, and it was eating him up inside. Suddenly, Claire stopped walking. She felt something, as if she could feel Marcus's eyes burning on her back. Slowly, she turned and faced him. Their eyes met. The world stopped for a second. And then Claire smiled. It wasn't a nostalgic smile or a resentful smile. It was the smile of someone who had moved on, of someone who had won. It was the greatest humiliation Marcus could have received. And for the first time since it all began, he realized that maybe he had never been the man Claire deserved. But now it was too late. The soft music filled the ballroom. But for Marcus, everything felt distant. He no longer heard the conversations around him. He no longer saw the curious eyes on him. All that existed was Claire. She was there, laughing, radiant, talking to other people, as if he had never even existed. The scene was almost surreal. For years he had imagined that if he ever saw her again, she would be different. Maybe tired, maybe still resentful. But no, Claire had not only moved on, she had blossomed in a way he never expected. Marcus poured another glass of scotch, feeling the liquid burn as it went down his throat. It wasn't his first glass, or his second, or his third. He had lost count of how many times the waiter had refilled his glass. He shouldn't have been drinking so much. But every glance he stole at Claire, every laugh she shared with Henry, the need to drown that unbearable feeling only grew. Why did it bother him so much? He should have been happy. He was Marcus, a successful, powerful man. He had everything he wanted. But somehow, tonight, he felt like he had nothing. Chloe had left after her outburst. Isabella, realizing she no longer had his attention, also left him alone at the bar. And now he was there, completely alone, fixated on Claire, drinking non-stop. She seemed so untouchable. Marcus hated to admit it, but this new version of her terrified him. For years, he was certain that Claire would always be a closed chapter, a ghost from the past that would be trapped in his memories. But now, seeing her like this, seeing her so unflappable, he realized the size of the mistake he had made. And then he saw an opportunity. Henry stepped away for a moment, muttering something in Claire's ear before heading to the restroom. Marcus waited only a few seconds before getting up, holding his glass of scotch tight. His heart was pounding, but he ignored the feeling. He didn't know exactly what he would say. He didn't know what he wanted to prove, but something inside him was screaming that he needed to talk to her. Claire's back was to him when he approached, but before he could say anything, she seemed to feel his presence. She turned slowly, and when her eyes met his, Marcus felt the impact. It was as if their entire shared past came rushing back at once, overwhelming him. Claire stared at him for a few seconds, and then, unhurriedly, brought her champagne flute to her lips and took a sip. Marcus. His name came out of her lips without emotion, without anger, without a greeting. just a cold acknowledgement of his presence. He swallowed hard. Now that he was there, he didn't know where to start. You're... He hesitated, searching for the words. Different. Claire raised an eyebrow, as if that observation were so obvious it wasn't even worth commenting on. Yes, she simply replied. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, trying to find a footing in this conversation that seemed lost before it had even begun. I didn't expect to see you here. Claire smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was a calm, confident smile, without any hint of fragility. The business world is small. This was inevitable. He took a deep breath. This was going worse than he had imagined. Can we talk? Claire tilted her head slightly, analyzing him. About what, exactly? Marcus hesitated. He didn't know. He didn't know what he wanted to hear from her. An apology, understanding, a chance to explain himself. He ran a hand over his face, feeling the weight of the alcohol in his body. I just wanted to know how you are. Claire let out a low laugh, not a laugh of mockery, but of disbelief. You want to know how I am? After all this time? Marcus felt his stomach turn. He didn't like the way this conversation was going. He didn't want to seem like a regretful man. He didn't want to show weakness, but here, in front of her, he no longer knew what he was doing. Claire took a step forward. Her eyes were fixed on his, and Marcus felt that for the first time, he was the one who was vulnerable in that relationship. I'm great, Marcus. Better than I've ever been. He swallowed hard. Do you miss anything? She looked at him for a moment, as if pondering the answer. And then she smiled again. Yes. Marcus felt his chest tighten, but before he could feel any hope, Claire finished. I miss myself. The woman I was before you. The woman I left behind to try and be good enough for a man who never valued me. Marcus blinked, feeling as if he had been punched. Claire didn't hate him. She just didn't care anymore. He opened his mouth to reply, but before he could, a voice came from behind him. Any problem here? Henry was back. He stopped next to Claire and without hesitation put his hand on her waist. It was a natural, intimate touch. Marcus felt every muscle in his body tense. Claire turned to Henry and smiled in a way that made Marcus feel a bitter taste in his mouth. No problem at all. Henry put his arm around her, and without even a second glance at Marcus, he led her away. Marcus stood there, frozen, holding the empty glass. The weight of reality crashed down on him. For the first time, he realized that he had lost Claire. Not because she had found another man, but because she had found something much more valuable. She found herself, and now there was no longer any room for him in her life. The ballroom seemed to spin around him. He turned and walked back to the bar, feeling an emptiness grow inside him. The bartender looked at him, waiting for a new order. Marcus squeezed the glass in his hand, feeling the anguish grow. Another one. The bartender hesitated, but then complied, and while Claire danced next to Henry, laughing, living, Marcus sank deeper into his own darkness. Because now, no matter how many women were by his side, he only wanted the one who would never come back. Marcus left the party feeling a heaviness in his chest, as if something was closing inside him. The cold night breeze of Sydney hit his face as he stood on the pavement. The echoes of the music and laughter still sounded in the distance. He looked to the side and saw his private driver waiting in the distance. But for some reason, he didn't want to get in the car. He didn't want to go home. He didn't want to face the suffocating silence of his apartment. Without thinking much, he raised his hand and hailed a taxi. As soon as he got in, he leaned back in the seat and let out a long sigh. The driver asked where he should take him, and Marcus hesitated for an instant before giving the address. The car started to move, and he rested his elbow on the window, watching the city lights pass in a blur. He took his phone from his pocket, opened the screen, and, on impulse, went on social media. He knew he shouldn't, but he couldn't help it. The first thing he saw was a recent photo from the party. Claire and Henry were together, laughing. She was holding a champagne flute and tilting her head slightly towards him, as if they were sharing a secret. The comments were full of praise. "What a power couple! Claire deserves a man like that. Henry and her are a perfect match. Marcus must be seething right now, eh?" He squeezed the phone hard. He felt a bitter taste in his mouth. The notification for a new article popped up at the top of the screen. Henry Valmont and Claire Morrison, the couple of the moment. Billionaire CEO and successful businesswoman are caught together at a gala event, sparking rumors of a possible romance. Marcus locked the screen and threw the phone onto the seat next to him, feeling his heart race. He didn't know if it was anger, frustration, or regret. Maybe it was all of them mixed together. The taxi stopped in front of the luxurious apartment building where he lived. Marcus got out, ignoring the doorman who came to greet him, and went straight into the elevator. The mirror reflected his tired expression, the slightly loosened tie, the heavy eyes of someone who had drunk too much. The door of his apartment closed behind him, and for the first time that night, the silence hit him like a blow. He took off his suit jacket, left it on the sofa, and went to the bar. He filled a glass with scotch, but before he could drink, he heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. He frowned. Chloe. She walked in with a determined stride, wearing a different dress from the one she had on at the party, as if she had stopped somewhere before coming here. Her face was serious, and her red eyes indicated she had been crying. Marcus took a deep breath. He wasn't in the mood for another argument. "What are you doing here?" Chloe closed the door behind her and crossed her arms. "Picking up my things." He let out a low, humorless laugh. "I thought you'd be doing that tomorrow." "And I thought you were a faithful husband, but look at me now," she retorted with a sarcastic smile. Marcus rolled his eyes and took a sip of scotch. "I don't want to fight." "Neither do I." She walked closer, analyzing him for a moment. "But you know what's funny, Marcus? I used to think you were a selfish scumbag, but now I see you're even worse than that." He raised an eyebrow, bored. "Oh yeah? What else am I?" Chloe leaned a little on the bar counter. "You're a man obsessed with something you can never have again, and that makes me happy." The air seemed to weigh down for an instant. Marcus looked away, but she continued. "You didn't even notice that Isabella was using you, that I was using you. You like to be desired, to feel like you're in control, but deep down, the only thing you really want is what you can no longer have." "Claire," he muttered without thinking. Chloe laughed, shaking her head. "I knew it. You were blind to her at that party, and honestly I hope you never forget her." "Why her?" Chloe took her bag from the sofa and gave him one last look. "She already forgot you a long time ago." And with that, Chloe left. The apartment fell silent again. Marcus looked at the glass of scotch in his hand, feeling a knot in his throat. He had lost Chloe, but above all, he had lost Claire. And maybe that was the only mistake he would never be able to fix. Time passed. Isabella showed up the next morning as if nothing had happened. She walked into the apartment with the confidence of someone who knew there was still a place for her there. "Good morning, my love." Marcus, who was sitting on the balcony, drinking coffee and looking out at the city without really seeing it, didn't answer right away. Isabella approached, sliding her arms around his shoulders. "Want to go out for dinner tonight?" He hesitated for a moment, but then forced a smile. "Sure, if I can't have Claire, maybe it's better to convince myself that I can still have something." But deep down, he knew. Nothing would ever be the same again. The months passed in a blur. Time, which once seemed like his greatest enemy, was now just a silent reminder that life went on regardless of what he felt. Marcus tried to move on. He tried to convince himself that he was still the same man he had always been. He accepted dinner invitations, frequented the same social circles, kept his name in the headlines, but something inside him had changed. Isabella was still by his side, always smiling, always perfect. She knew she had won, at least on paper. Claire was out of the picture. Chloe was just a distant memory, and she was now the woman next to Marcus. But deep down, Isabella knew she would never have him completely. He was there, but his mind was elsewhere. His eyes lost their sparkle whenever something about Claire came up in a conversation, and it irritated her more than she would admit. Claire, on the other hand, blossomed more every day. Her company expanded, her influence grew, and her happiness became visible even to those who didn't know her. She and Henry were seen together numerous times, and every appearance of theirs seemed to confirm what many already suspected. He treated her like someone who deserved to be cared for, not like a trophy, not like a possession, but as a woman worthy of being loved. Marcus tried to ignore her, tried not to follow her news, but every update reached him, whether he wanted it or not. And with time, he began to realize something he had never admitted before. Claire didn't just move on, she found herself. And him? He was still trapped in a cycle that led nowhere. It was on a rainy afternoon that something inside him finally gave way. He was at his desk, looking out the window, the drops of water streaming down the glass as if they were reflecting exactly how he felt. For the first time, he allowed himself to admit that he was exhausted. Exhausted from running, exhausted from pretending, exhausted from trying to fill an emptiness that seemed to grow every day. Then, he did something he never thought he would. He picked up his phone, hesitated for an instant, and before he could change his mind, he dialed a number. The call rang a few times before being answered. Claire's voice was serene, without any extra emotion. He almost gave up in that moment. "Hello, Claire." The silence on the other end made his heart pound in his chest. He knew in that instant that she hadn't expected this call. "What do you want, Marcus?" He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to find the right words. But there were no right words for what he wanted to say. He just needed to say something. He heard her breathing on the other end, patient, but not exactly interested. "Go on," she said. Marcus swallowed hard. He was never good at admitting mistakes. He was never good at admitting he had failed. But Claire wasn't just anyone. Claire was the one. "I hurt you, and I was an idiot for a long time." On the other end, Claire said nothing. "I'm not expecting this to change anything," he continued, clutching the phone tightly. "But I needed to say that I see it now. I see everything I did. And you deserved so much more than I gave you." The silence lasted for many seconds. When she finally replied, her voice had no anger. It had no resentment. "I know, Marcus." He held his breath. "I know I deserved more." The answer, simple but so full of meaning, was like a blow to his chest. "I just wanted you to know that," he said, feeling the knot tighten in his throat. "I know," she repeated. And this time there was a tone of gentleness there. Then she did something he never expected. "I hope you find your peace, Marcus." He closed his eyes, feeling the words echo inside him. "Thank you, Claire." And with that, the line went dead. He remained there, seated, looking at the phone, feeling a strange sensation inside him. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't regret, it was acceptance. For the first time, he truly accepted that Claire would never come back. And in some way, that was liberating. Time passed, and Marcus began to change. He distanced himself from the empty parties, reduced the amount of scotch he drank, and began to focus more on his work. Not because he wanted to distract himself, but because for the first time in years, he wanted to be a better man. Isabella noticed the change, and one day she simply left. No big arguments, no fights. She just knew her role there was over. Marcus didn't stop her. He let her go, just as Claire had moved on. Just as he himself needed to move on. It was only years later, at a charity event, that Marcus saw her again. Claire was next to Henry, laughing with some people. He watched her from a distance, and this time he didn't feel jealousy. He felt pride. She looked in his direction for a brief instant. Their eyes met, and then Claire smiled. Marcus smiled back, and in that moment, he knew he was finally free. Have you ever met someone who went through something similar? Someone who was betrayed, humiliated, but managed to turn their life around and prove that the best revenge is living happily? Tell us in the comments. I want to know your opinion on this story. Tell me, what city are you watching this video from? If you liked this story, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos like this.